Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I can still hear the chill out music in the background, which I'm just going to pause. And welcome to the second week of the Freeformers and Friends live stream. My attempt, Freeformers' attempt, Emily and I's attempt at bringing together the voices that you don't usually hear from on LinkedIn, bringing them to the fore and having really interesting conversations about how different people, different perspectives, and all that good stuff can affect what we're doing HR, employee experience, learning and development, and all that incredible stuff. So, as teased at the beginning of the week, we have got an incredible person. We're so lucky to have with us Mulkey. Now, as mentioned in that tease, Mulkey and I have done a lot of stuff together in the past, both inside of work and outside of work, but mainly at work. And they are just one of the most incredible designers I've ever worked with. The process they go through, the consideration that they put onto absolutely everything they do transforms itself into incredible stuff. And one of those incredible things is the thing that myself and Emily absolutely love, and that's the Freeformers branding. So Mulkey is the genius behind that. So we might touch a little bit on that and those funny little shapes that make our kind of, I forget the name, the glyph. I'm going to get Mulkey to correct me when I come back, but I think it's the glyph and all that cool stuff. So without further ado, let's bring to the stage Mulkey. Oh, in rehearsal, you came on the other side of the screen. So I am now completely, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to flip us around because we can see the logo better above you now. You can do that and point it and all sorts.
Always considerate. Yeah. Good afternoon, Toby. Thank you for the intro.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I think I was rather modest about it, to be completely honest.
That's very kind of you. I've got the same sort of nerves I have before pitching to an important client, so you're up there.
Wow, I'm as important as an important like that's wow. Now I feel under pressure. I was just going to have a nice, relaxed, informal chat with you, and I was like, okay, so I've got some expectation here that I've got to match. Mulkey, what have you been doing this week?
This week has been a wild week. I've been looking after a ginger and white tiger. I'm house sitting. This isn't my wall. It's all an illusion. And then between that, doing some work with a startup. We are working on some collaterals for their recruitment. And then mostly enjoying being around Wimbledon Common and just being out in the woods like a womble.
You beat me to the womble comment. I was going to say it, and you beat me to it.
I can see it forming in your mind. One of my skills is knowing what the client's thinking.
And this is the problem. We've known each other now too long that you can anticipate all the dad jokes that I'm going to deliver way before I actually deliver them. So who is Mulkey? That's my question to you. That's my first question. So we, for the listeners and viewers at home, we used to work together quite 3 years ago now.
I'd say 2019.
Yeah, so we entered the pandemic working together. I know that. So you've done some really cool stuff. But what did you do before we met?
So I would say I'd always been a creative ever since a small child, whether I was drawing Spider-Man or creating my ideas for DVD covers in Paint Shop Pro. I think it was back in about 2006. I just love making stuff. And so that problem solving aspect, rather than going to design, I became a product designer, that whole piece around like spotting problems and developing products and services, the mechanics, the computer modeling. And so I've just always been a creator. And for a while, that's taken different forms. So I was working in a startup trying to tackle festival waste. I was side hustling some graphic design in order to put food on the table. And then over time, I started spotting the opportunities in design and art direction and just elbowing my way to get to senior stakeholders and pitch some ideas.
Nice. And when we first met, we were working at a media agency, and you headed up the. See, I tried to obviously delineate between design and graphic design because, yeah, I keep falling myself into that trap, and I think I called you a designer all the way up leading up to this. I think I didn't slip up, but you looked after the design team or the graphic design team. What are we going to call that period of your life?
Yeah, so I had a period where I was a freelance graphic designer and I'd go into agencies around London. I had a connection that brought me into this media agency, which we met, but I was there about 2016. And starting off is just doing like a list of deliverables would come in and you produce them. And that's how a lot of people think about graphic design. And kind of that what is graphic design is that producing the graphics based off a list. But I built a relationship over the next sort of 3 and 4 years where I'd get the list of deliverables, but I'd be like, but what's the concept? Like, they don't want it to look like the brand. So what's it going to look like? And you'd get in this pickle where the client didn't know what they liked, but they knew what they didn't like. You weren't following a brand anymore. And so you have to get this point where you're creating a concept. And to create a concept, you need to kind of understand what problem you're solving, understand what problem you're solving, really you need to be asking the right questions, the highest level. And that's kind of where my product design background came in. And so over the years, it went from just doing a set of deliverables to then creating kind of the concept behind it. Then I started pitching them into clients and worked my way up into this position where I was being an art director, but still a freelancer. And then with the pandemic and everything that happened, I wanted to take a bit more responsibility to help protect the team, ensure its finances, and train and tutor the designers. So I went in-house and became the design director. So part of that was running the sort of commercial side of why we would do design, selling it. And then the other half of it was, well, I had the background in producing all those graphics. Not every art director has a graphic design background, but I could then also produce the assets. So I'd be out there coming up with concepts, and then either me or the team would be producing a list of deliverables.
And when you talk about some of that stuff, that is because I think you talked about delivering stuff that is employee facing, right? So where a company, of course, has a brand already, it has something. And when you create something for that internal audience, what you don't necessarily want to do, or most clients definitely don't want you to do, especially their brand team, is they want you to create a new brand that sits within the company. Like you say, they want it to look and feel like the actual brand of the company, but as a different identity, which I imagine is completely different from like consumer work, because from consumer work, it's like you're probably starting from the ground up, unless you're, I don't know, Virgin, and then you're creating like sub companies under that with different branding. I suppose, is that probably the most similar kind of concept, that Virgin is this brand, and then there's Atlantic, money, wine, radio that sits underneath that? Is that kind of what you do for like an employee experience? You're nodding. So is that, yeah? Does that make sense?
So we do a mixture of like internal employee facing, and that's half my background. And the other half is the consumer campaigns and billboards and public facing, maybe B2B. But for that internal piece, you would go into it and your L&D team are like, please, we just want it to be a different color. We're so sick of red or yellow or whatever it is. And you can understand their predicament, because you have all this like beautiful branding that's going out to the public or the consumer or the end clients or end users. But then when you're inside, if your content and your messaging and the things you're doing to your employees looks like the external one, it kind of gets lost and gets jumbled together. So you end up with an L&D team that's coming to you going, please make it different, go completely crazy. And then you have the brand police come back in and they'll be like, rein it back in. So there's always this tension. And for years, we would just design crazy stuff and then get reined in by the brand police. Now I'm always like, we need to get sign off from your brand team. Let's have a meeting with them. Let's see what we can push it. And so the middle ground, particularly on internal campaigns, was like, what's not clearly defined in the brand guidelines, and exploit that. So normally there's the logos, there's the main color, secondary color palette and font, and then there'll be a photographic style or sometimes an illustration style or an icon style. And if they don't have an illustration style, you found your gap and you can exploit and use illustration as a point of differentiation against the branding. Or maybe it's you have a range of photography, but you narrow it down to just one type of photography. Maybe it's all human facing because you're doing employees and people. But then when we do the external stuff, you're generally staying within the brand, but that's where you need a creative concept as your point of differentiation, and it becomes the story of the concept behind it. Whereas when we're doing that internal work, we're just looking to come off brand and looking for the places that we can bend the brand. We don't break the brand. So it's typically your font colors are in there, your font's in there, you follow the use of logo, and then you can see what you can dial up or down.
That's very cool. we've got viewers now. We did have some viewers at the start, but it was the question Volky asked me when we joined. It's like, how do I know there's people watching? So I'm just going to take this moment to say, hey, Mulkey, we've got people watching. And every week I get one sole person viewing from Twitch. I don't know who this person is because it doesn't tells me, but like someone out there, I imagine it must be a bot, but I can't imagine anyone on Twitch is going, huh, Freeformers are going live. I'll check out that. Like, surely you're watching Call of Duty or something.
You undersell your audience. Clearly, there's a gamer market out there.
Absolutely. And we've got some people on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. And just to those people that are there, please do drop us a message. If you have a question for Mulkey as well, fire it away. But we have Callie joining us from LinkedIn. Hello. And Laura is joining us as well. Hello.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. For joining this lovely, what feels like a fireside chat, they call it corporate, right? Like we've both got like these big chairs that we're just leaning back and we're just going, let me face the right way. So there we go. So yeah, tell me about that. So if you do have any questions for Mulkey when they're saying stuff, any ideas come to mind, please just drop them in the comments. This is just an informal chat between a couple of friends, couple of folks just hanging out, talking about design.
I mean, that's most of my social meets.
Yeah.
And we get another designer. We talk about the latest brands.
Is that what you talk about? Is that
if we allow ourselves to talk shop?
Okay, so you have those a little bit of a clear deal. What's going on in brand then, Mulkey? What's the biggest thing going on in brand at the moment?
You know, it's a little bit like behind the times, but there's balloons around me. Did you do that?
No, you did that. You're on a Mac. It's a Mac feature. If you do this, I think you'll get a thumbs up. There we go. There's also, I think you can do that, and I think you'll get fireworks. I think it is. No, I've just made you do something.
Somebody will screenshot.
Yeah, that's your Mac doing that. I was speaking to future guest on Freeformers and Friends, Rocket, and he figured that out whilst we were on a call together, and we Googled it, and we found all the different gestures you can do as a Mac user. Here, I'm a Windows user, so I can do thumbs up and just do this, and my computer doesn't try and to create a personality for me. What were we asking? Biggest thing in brand?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly off-center, but I've been watching for a little while, like essentially the Silicon Valley layoffs, and they're slightly designed, but all design teams, not just graphic and brand. But that real, particularly because where the reason I went in-house was that idea of being able to protect the team when COVID hit and things were happening, and I was outside of the business. I couldn't have an influence in the way we were earning money or thinking about proving the value to the business to try and keep the design team in. And so it's interesting now that after all these years on like this idea of startups, you put money in and everybody's like having a great time, and then they have to start finding a way to make money and things change. And you're starting to see the repercussions of that in some of like the startups and the Teslas and the X. So not entirely brand, but something I've been thinking about lately is that like when you hire an in-house, you've always got that risk of layoffs and how you balance that all out.
I just love how your brain works because, like, it's not where I thought you were going to go, and it's like that's so interesting.
We'll pick another one then. We can go with the increasing use of serif fonts. So the fonts that look a bit handwritten with the tiny little bits at the tops of the straight lines. So instead of a complete rectangle on your eye, it's got the little bits in the corner that make it look handwritten. And we were talking about this a couple of years ago when we were doing a brand thing, presenting concepts and putting in these serif fonts, the little lignatures on the corners, and talking about how it's coming back and it's a big thing. And then about 3 months, they didn't pick it because they thought it looked old-fashioned. But then about 3 months later, Burberry relaunched with their new brand that's got the lignatures instead of like the sans serif font. And there's been just an increasing amount of like using it as a secondary font. So we were at Learning Techs a few weeks ago, and like, nearly every single brand was using a serif font as their tagline or their top message. So I found it really interesting that it's now coming back around, and you see it a lot more on advertising. Look at the bus shelters; they've got adverts with them on.
And I think that's in my unexperienced and uneducated opinion in terms of design. Like Times New Roman screwed everyone over, right? Because that set the expectation of what a serif font is, like, and it was default at the was it default before it moved to Arial? Like Times New Roman then went to Arial, so you went for, but Times New Roman is like no one likes it, no one uses it. Why does it even exist? But now you've got the what you said, like you say, the humanist kind of expression of that, which is I only know that term because you used it when creating the Freeformers logo. So I was like,
the humanist concept.
yeah. I was like, okay, cool. I can say that now. Don't really know what I'm saying, but that's really interesting that serif is making a comeback.
And it's maybe not quite as formalized as your Times New Roman. There's a lot of people playing with it. And sometimes, like the humanist bit's not always necessarily that it looks like Times New Roman, but maybe it just has an element of roundness and handwrittenness to it. So I think we went through like, there's the old-fashioned serifs from book printing. Then as we went into digital, everything became flatter, sans serif, strong, bolder, a lot of things in like full caps as well. So like Burberry was black, all caps, and sans serif. And there were a number of like Burton would be similar. And so we had this kind of digital move, but now I think we're moving into like sort of humanist phase and somewhere between sort of stylized clear handwriting and a serif font is kind of where people are at. I think it's a reflection of the AI. I think it's the reflection of the modernism that we've been having, like that digital element, and now having a bit more playful in the same way that Memphis was a revolt against the beige of computers and technology back in the 80s.
Lovely stuff. I have flashed up on the screen for yours and my pleasure. We have a question from dear Laura. Thank you, listener/viewer. I don't know why I keep saying listener. I think it's because I think I'm Frasier, which is showing my age. And now that's my sitcom reference point. But Laura writes in with a question. How do you work around when somebody asks you for new brand guidelines/design elements, but they have no idea what they actually want or need? The amount of times I've been in the room with Molky trying to tackle this point is untold. So do you find yourself coming up with a creative idea yourself at the risk of them saying no and needing not to take that personally, or do you push for more guidance from them before accepting and starting the project? Interesting.
Certainly. There's a couple of ways, and it's going to totally depend on the scale and size of the business. So we've done it for large organizations, and we do a lot of work up front where we're speaking with the existing employees and the target audience. And the thing we're trying to do with the strategy is understand how the brand got to where it is today. Or if it's a new one, how ideally we're doing research, but say for Freeformers, we work directly with Toby and it's a smaller scale project. How do you perceive a brand? How do you want it to come across? We then start to look at who your competitors might be and analyzing their brands. And are there any heuristics like shortcuts, shorthands for things that are in your industry that we can either leverage or use as a point of differentiation? When we look at other brands, we're looking at, well, what color spaces are they using so that we can take these different things about the way, like healthcare is nearly always blue and green. So we look for that shorthand, and we're trying to find a gap in your competitors where you can occupy a color or find a way to differentiate. And then through that research and speaking, generally we want to put together 3 concepts, and we're going to work very hard to try and make sure our concepts don't overlap with each other so that we get very distinct concepts and we're dialing up certain aspects. So we take the Freeformers brand, for example. We had this idea of, maybe it's about the playfulness, it's about the workshops, it's about being able to build your own solutions. And as we start to come up with that idea, that creativity and the playfulness starts to maybe hint we could use some more primary colors. We start to then develop this concept of the play blocks, which we use for Freeformers, the rectangle, the circle, and the triangle, and how we can utilize that as something in the font to create a glyph, and how we can then use those elements across social media. So it's that experience then of like, if we have a concept and a rationale, we mood board it out, and then we start to create these ideas about how it can express itself. And we can cheat a little bit because we know we're going to have a logo. We're going to have to make something for social media that fits in a circle. That's our glyph. We know you're going to do LinkedIn content, so we can start to think, well, if I can borrow this element and put it on all the collaterals, that's a nice F you've got there. We can use this across all the different collaterals and unite our brand. And then we're working on colors so that they are accessible, they meet certain standards when they appear on screen, and which ones can go together. But there's a strategy piece we do up front, which creates our insights. We then create 3 concepts. We'll have a short paragraph that clearly defines why they're different. Normally pitch in with a mood board and work with a client so that we can discuss it and see which one they like. And we start to then pursue that. So along the way, we're cutting the branches off, but we've got this narrative from the ground upwards where we started with this. This is what your competitors are doing. Here's a rationale why we built this idea. Here's some options. We're going with this idea, and we build it out. Do I take it personally? Not really. That's the joy, isn't it? I'm a designer, not an artist. Artists create from the soul. It's their own expression. A designer is trying to solve a complex problem. Design always has a purpose. You could have an artwork. You put a date and time on it. It's now design. It's become a poster. It's got a purpose. And I think that's the difference between art and design. Is often it's the creative expression and it's personal. And maybe they build up a style and then they get commissioned. Whereas design, it's about our process of solving the problem and producing the item with a purpose, and about finding the right problems to solve.
And this is where I've seen you be the most effective, is because you have a problem-solving brain. The way you approach stuff, and this is why it's design, not graphic design, because a lot of stuff is graphic design. But the way your brain works is you think far beyond that, and how that transcends itself in a physical or digital space, but also how the audience then receiving that. It's like next level thinking, which, having worked with many designers in the past, you're the first one that truly takes people on that story, because it'd be quite easy to go, here are the 3 ideas we've got, and I've seen people do it. These are the 3 ideas I've got. We've got wacky, less wacky, and bland. How wacky do you want to go? Without any real understanding of, actually, if you told the story of how you got to, I don't know why I say wacky, but how you got to the wackiest one, actually the narrative to that one is probably way more interesting than it was to the bland one, because the bland one is just executing the brand as is, really.
Often an option, we stick it in there just in case.
Yeah, well, yeah, you don't want to lose the work, right? Hey, if you want vanilla, then we can definitely deliver vanilla, because it's actually quite easy. But obviously doesn't give you the joy of problem solving. A problem solver wants to solve problems, and if you are given a challenge that isn't solving a problem, it's like, oh, a little bit of my soul died.
And the other thing I have to think about is, like, if you're in with a very senior stakeholder, you're getting to tell the story and you get to clarify and answer their questions. But if you're producing something, maybe you're only pitching to somebody who's a bit further down the chain, and they've got to explain it to their stakeholder to get the sign off. You want to make sure that that you're explaining it as clearly as possible, and you're doing that verbally, but you're also producing a document that they can understand, that they can share, and that they can. You need them to be able to repeat your story, because you might not get to pitch to the ultimate decision maker, and so it needs to be clear for them. And the other thing I really working to do, and the reason we have these 3 concepts, is, like, I might not even like one of the concepts, but its purpose is to drive discussion, or it's to get them to explicitly state what they don't like. So it's very easy to sort of have 2 ideas and then accidentally start blending them into one, and then you end up with 2 very similar ideas. And what you're trying to do, particularly as you're diverging the thinking and you've got these 3 ideas, is you want to make them think about what they do want and definitely what they don't want. And that's why, like, I might not even like a concept, but I've used it to push the thinking. I want to make sure there's very clear lines between the concepts. They don't bleed into each other. Then they'll ask us to blend 2 together, and that's fine, because that's the natural instinct anyway.
Yeah. And it's almost like you're building a decision tree, like a design decision tree. It's like you can go down 3 of these paths, and by choosing one, you're discounting the other, and you might want to, like, navigate, and you're kind of then going deeper and deeper into that. I've got Bandersnatch in my head just because I know we worked on a Bandersnatch.
It also gives you the option to work backwards as well. So if you are working with a stakeholder, but they've got to pitch it to somebody senior, they don't like the latest round, either you can roll back to the previous, or ideally they've already had that approved, and so you're not resetting all your work and burning it all to the ground. And that's the real danger with jumping in very far and having finalized artwork and concepts, is you've burnt all that time in coming up with the concept and producing an actual mock-up with all the content in it, and then they don't like it, and then you're resetting back to the ground. And so one of the things we do is almost like a milestone. It's very much like the design council's double diamonds. So we're still like looking for the insight and the story. We diverge our thinking into three very clearly different ideas, encouraging the client to come down to one. And then we don't really start to bring it to life until we've got one of those picked, or we're blending two of them together. And it gives you the opportunity to then, within the sphere of your concept, differentiate and separate it. And it may be just as nuanced as like, we're dialing up that this feels safe, or we're dialing up, instead of having it as a digital sans serif font, we're going to make it feel more human. We're going to focus on human photography, and we're going to use a softer, more organic type font.
That's interesting. I'm going to pause there for a moment, and I would just like you to copy what I do, if you wouldn't mind. Just humor me for a second. Please may you do this. Awesome. Next, can you do this? That one works.
That's the balloon one. Okay.
Oh, here's a good one. 2 thumbs down. Oh, there's supposed to be a two, like there's a special one for 2 thumbs down. Oh, you can go 2-piece.
Double kawaii.
Yeah, you should get confetti. There we go. Oh, okay. There's only 2 more, and then I promise we'll get back on topic. 2 thumbs up. Yes, nice. And then give us the horns.
Pretty good. It's very similar to the Wasa logo.
Oh, and it all comes full circle. So about what you do. So I saw a post you posted, a kind of a preview of this chat on LinkedIn earlier in the week. And so we've talked about like the design, the look and feel of things employees touch, but then they kind of tend to have names, right? And let's focus on probably like. Emily's just said, does this mean you were Googling stuff while Smolky was talking? Yes, it does. I was still listening. I can listen and type sometimes. It was a very insightful what Molky said.
Toby's heard it many times over the last 5 years.
Exactly. There's the cat.
This is Tibbers.
Tibbers. Is Tibbers short for something?
It's not my cat, so I don't know.
Okay, well, you just have to let us know a little bit later on if Tibbers, like, I don't know what Tibbers would be short for. Like, I don't know why I asked that. But naming stuff for employees. So people design products, services, initiatives, programs, training courses, online content, films for their employees, and they have this insatiable need to call it something. And because it's usually to do with the development of people, they call it like grow or flower or flourish or
aspire,
yeah. I had there was stepping into leadership, stepping into management, like leaping. There's like, it's always the same kind of stuff. And ordinarily when I see those, it's because those teams haven't worked with designers. They've kind of gone, well, we're the L&D team or we're the HR team, we can come up with this name by ourselves. But everyone seems to always end up with the same names of things. Why?
I think there's a couple of things. So, like, if you're an L&D team, I think you've either got the choice of sugarcoating your program. You want to make it sound aspirational. Often it's about going from where you are today to somewhere else. So you've got inspire, aspire, apex, grow. All these things about looking at the distance and heading in that direction and connecting where you are to today via a route to where you will be in the future. You know, and 50% of them are mountaintop photographies and people going hiking.
And there's always that, like someone on the top of a mountain doing like this, and it's just like
a team shot of everybody holding hands in front of a sunset on a mountain.
And it's always from Unsplash. always from Unsplash.
Okay,
We're not
and
going to
so
spend any money on our stock photography. We're just going to use the ones from Unsplash.
which is a great resource. Pexels is also out there with a P. Um,
There's
any other brands you'll use.
just yeah, we're not the BBC. We can name brands. I'm sure we'll, as a sponsor for the live stream, Unsplash will do that. But when I was working for a telecommunications company, we worked with a marketing agency, and the brand of the learning offering for that company was company name Campus. I was like, okay, it's pretty route one, right? Like that's campus, university. It's like, okay, I see what you've done there. It's not a huge stretch, but the photography they used was definitely Unsplash, because I see it all the time on the tube, and it's in different contexts, but it still reminds me of that corporate university that was created. It's so bizarre.
I used to see it on the bus stops as well. They're all using Unsplash in their photography. And it's a great resource. They look lovely, but maybe just scroll a little further down the page.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how you've got Aspire and Grow, and how those are like getting where you need to be. So they're quite the positive ones, and they're sugar coated and they're aspirational where you go. The other thing you can do is you can have the stick, and it very much describes what it is, which is your campus or your hubs. And the second type of so the leadership one, the Aspire is a leadership program, or it's the graduate program. You've got the skills and they want you to get better where you are today. And the other one, and the one you should be nervous about if you find yourself being offered it or seeing it, is the Ignite or the Spark. It's the team trying to light a fire under your ass because your skills or your role or just something in your work sphere is becoming irrelevant. And there's a chance that you may become irrelevant. And they often want to sugarcoat that with Spark and Ignite because they don't want to worry people. But those are the ones where they're actually trying to get you to sidestep into something else. And it's about learning new skills to make you more relevant because something about your role or something about your skill set is due to become irrelevant. Maybe it's in a few years, maybe it's 10. But I think it's worth noting these companies are putting the time and energy to create these courses, your skills hubs, your future skills, your future next. And they are actually putting the time and energy to invest in people. And it's on those people then to take that opportunity. So if you are offered it, probably worth taking it, because of the way everything's moving at the moment, the only skill that that will be useful is your ability to learn.
That was deep.
Yes. If you're on an Ignite or a Spark, study hard and step into something else. Because that's not aspirational. That's trying to light a fire under your ass and get you to move somewhere else. Not move company, but move your skill set somewhere else.
That's so interesting. I never thought of it like that. I just because every company I've worked for has had I think the mountaintop one. I can just see it every single time. The trend I'm seeing now, though, with also AI, because we're live on LinkedIn and other channels, but we've got to talk about AI, otherwise we don't get indexed for popularity if we don't talk about it. So AI. Copilot. Copilot is just like the thing. Just everyone seems to be calling it Copilot. I get that, like, it's your assistant, but everyone seems to be going for Copilot. Is there any should I just not be that angry about it? Should I just get over it, or is there some logic why everything is called Copilot?
Yeah, it's always about the sort of the words and the feelings it evokes, right? So they're trying not to scare you. It's a co-pilot, it's dependent on you, and you're a pilot because you're steering it and directing it where to go. So it's a very friendly sort of term for it, isn't it? Right? Like you're in partnership. So it's all about kind of the emotions, the ideas that it sparks around it, right? And that's always what we're trying to do. Is it a good name? You know what? If we all decide to call it co-pilot, I'm fine with that. In the same way that it just helps us work out what the tool is and what it's doing. Will it be limiting in the same way that a desktop really shapes the way we think about how a computer works? Like this idea of having a file in a folder and it can't be in another folder because for the computer it's a network. It could be in three places at once. It doesn't matter, but we all conceptualize it like that. So I wonder if it's limiting in the way that we're going to conceptualize how we use AI. But for now, Copilot, I'm fine with it.
It's so interesting because, yeah, ultimately, it won't always be a co-pilot, right? It will just do stuff and you won't have to do it. Then that's where some of those things get to. So it's more placating those kind of things, which is good. And just one more on names, and then I will move on. I did a post a couple of years ago that like every startup was naming itself in like one of three ways. So the moon pigs of this world, or funky pigeon, it was like something animal, color animal, action animal. So, like everyone was doing that everyone was funky pigeoning all over the place. For our American viewers, Funky Pigeon is a greetings card company here in the UK. Then there was the LY. So, what service are you doing? And add LY to it. So, if you're a designer, you'll be Designerly.
Yeah.
And then there was the other one, which now I can't remember what it was. But
there's
there
a
was
lot of things of like removing a vowel.
That was it. It was like you just drop a letter or drop all the vowels, and then that's your name. And you're like,
I can't talk because my sustainability group was People Power without vowels. PPL, PWR. That probably gives you a period of when it was created.
well,
2016.
this is my point, right? The LY, the dropping the vowels, the funky pigeons, the all those kind of things. They are of a moment in time, and I think we're kind of getting quite to a lazy part where it's just like, went to HR and Learn Technologies, and all of a sudden, all these companies had AI at the end or at the beginning of their name. And it's like, it just reminded me of when the iPhone first came out, and then everyone put a lowercase I in front of everything. iPlayer, iPhone, iFix, iSight. Like there was just lowercase i's all over the flipping place. I think we're now seeing the era of that lowercase I coming back, but probably the end, and accompanied by an A, which I like. For me, it feels like AI is going to be so ubiquitous, but that to call it out as a specific part of your name feels a bit weird.
I've got vague memories of maybe .com and web internet-based businesses doing a similar sort of thing, right? And then you kind of limit yourself in the future by naming yourself after your tool or your kind of WebMD kind of works. But yeah, and I think to go back to your point, like Funky Pigeon and Moon Pig, they're very evocative. They create a picture. That's probably very useful for them. I wonder with the LY whether that means you can copyright it or not, because there's things about copywriting just words and you have to change them. And that's why I think the whole removing a letter is a thing, right? Because if you remove a letter, 99% sure it's trademarkable at that point, right? It's unique. You're likely to be able to find a domain name. So things like being driven by trying to find free domain names. We've done brand projects where we really loved the name, but they couldn't get the handle on Instagram. And so we changed the brand name so they can get all the socials to be the same. So I imagine there's elements about creating unique names, and that shorthand probably was adding an LY, dropping a letter. Almost guaranteed you can trademark it some form.
Interesting, because obviously, like music, right? There's only a finite number of names out there. So you know, did Ed Sheeran copy music or not? Well, there's only certain combination of notes that you can do in pop music that resonate with your audience, and they may sound similar, but it could genuinely happen by accident. I suppose that'll be the next step is like, how do you search for trademark music, I guess, but that's a whole different topic. Final question, and then we're going to go through to the deck of cards that actually you designed. Why should employees be treated more like customers rather than employees? I know it's something we talk about a lot of Freeformers, but it's something that you kind of talk about in your design methodology as well.
I mean, let's spin out a yarn. Let's say you're a big fan of Apple, you love the product, you've had the latest iPhone, whatever, and it's a seamless experience. You see a job advert on LinkedIn from Apple, it's perfectly sized on the page, it's simple and elegant. And so you click it and you reply. Then you get a reply in an email, the signature's missing a picture, that's a bit odd, like it's got a little X in the corner. Then you arrive to the interview and it's been booked on Teams. You get a bit confused, why is Apple using Microsoft Teams? You turn up for your onboarding, you get the job, there's a cat. You get the job and you turn up on the day and then, nobody's there to greet you, your IT doesn't work, and they hand you a Windows computer, right? And throughout of that, you've got this kind of delta of disappointment. Here's what the brand set, and the employee experience has been down here. And along the step, at any point in the sort of 5 years of an employee life cycle, there's an opportunity to either delight or disappoint your employee. And as you start to rack up all these disappointments, it can just manifest in this idea of like disgruntlement within the team, all the way through to if you're consistently having massive deltas of disappointment in between the brand and their actual experience, you can create this sort of tsunami of negativity that coalesces into your Glassdoor ratings nosediving and your attrition rate. Is that the right one? The one where everybody leaves a lot, just skyrocketing.
Attrition, yeah.
Then on the other hand, you have the opportunity to have the delta of delight, where your experience as you're being onboarded and brought in, you're supported, you have these training programs, and it creates this opportunity for you to turn your employees essentially into ambassadors. And the more they love your company, the more that delta is even going up from the brand expectation to the employee expectation. You just create this ability to uh, you just have a lot of positivity out there. You're getting worse employees working more happily, and just their experience and therefore their communication to the wider world is there. And I think in that is the ability to really capitalize on the idea of an employer brand. So we have the brand for a company, Rolex, Apple, whoever it is out there, and people love the products, and maybe that encourages them to get involved. But some of the best brands out there, like Heineken, has an amazing employer brand that you take ownership of that employee experience and craft it to be not necessarily identical, but similar, connected, and as valuable almost as your brand, so that your employee experience is great. And you can end up using it as like a recruitment tool within itself. Like, so people join. The typical example of that is like a grad scheme. And people know that this place has an amazing grad scheme, and therefore they're going to join that company. And I think that ability to have the delta of delight and have an employee brand that stands next to and is strong and is good and is considered as your main brand is just that ability to keep people in your business and have them become advocates for you.
The delta of delight. That's a new one on me, and I very much like it. Is that like Mulkey IP that is going to be in your book one day, right?
It's spelled DLTA, so no vowel, so I can trademark it. Delta of delight.
So you don't confuse it
Delta
with
of
the airline.
disappointment.
One other question, then we're going to move over to the deck of cards because I just want a follow up one. So because you use like quite prestigious brands, Rolex, Apple, you mentioned another one as well. So you've kind of got to meet that expectation or exceed it. Anything below is dissatisfaction and underwhelming and negative. So would you say that it's probably to create a great employee experience at a company that has a poor brand brand notoriety? So let's say P&O Ferries as an example, who were absolutely trashed in the press and everything that they were doing with their people. So the expectation there is so low that actually it's quite easy to improve upon those, and therefore actually the impact you're having is more noticeable. Whereas if you had to do it for Apple, it's like, oh, this is quite difficult because we've now got to do way more than like an average HR or people do.
Certainly, there's the opportunity. Like, if you don't have much of a brand, or you're not necessarily known, but you can use the employee experience to create advocates. Maybe it's more like a local accountancy or whatever. But if you can, you may not be known particularly for your brand, but people are using you, and then you have the opportunity to create a beautiful curated experience that just makes the employee feel valuable. They can pass that backwards to their university, and therefore your graduate recruitment becomes that bit easier. And be realistic as well. Like, maybe you're not the final destination, but you offer a stepping stone into a career that's not the main path that other people are taking. Everybody's doing the grad scheme here, but you'll get direct access to the owner, and you can move on in 3 years' time. So, you can use this as a tool to improve your employee experience, use it as a recruitment drive. And even if you don't have a brand, it's something you can do in-house, but just be realistic. It's, like I said, stepping stone perhaps if you're a smaller brand, or you're going to teach people the skills to create their own business.
Lovely stuff. Time is a marching on, so it is time to wrap up our show with our. I need a jingle. I need a jingle. And if Mike Tully is watching or just watching on catch up, he is a DJ, and we have talked about creating jingles. I owe him a brief because we have a DJ who wants to spin the wheels of steel. Yeah, again, 80s radio reference, I guess. Yeah.
It's not coming up.
There you go.
Oh, there's the double.
We're going to play a game of What If. We're going to take one card from the deck and we're going to have a forward-thinking conversation about employee experience. Mulkey, I'm going to offer you business leaders or human resources. Which deck would you like?
Let's go business leaders.
Okay, bye-bye, HR. See you later. We're going business leaders.
I bet you're a riot at a party, Toby.
Yeah, I just take these
you
with
take
me.
the cards out.
Everyone has shots, and then we get out the employee experience cards and we really kick it up a notch. It's a wonder I only have one friend. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to flick through the deck, and I need you to shout "stop" when you want me to stop.
Stop.
Okay, here we go. Your card, Mulkey.
Off the nerves.
Oh, it's not punishment. Chloe has asked how you get some cards like this. I will.
You got Shopify, right?
We are in the process of setting it up. So, in short, you can't at the moment, but you will be able to. Look on our website. Anyway, so here is our card. What if we could only manage our employee experience with one platform? So, if we think about some of the clients that we've worked with in the past, they have a benefits platform, they have a learning management platform, they have a comms platform, they have a HR operational platform. They have a CRM for recruitment. Maybe they use some stuff for
library
marketing.
so that you know where the links are for all of these things.
So let's reframe the question slightly. Which one of those platforms would you use, or would you ditch all of them and try and use something from the consumer world?
I mean, if I talk about what we're doing in Wasar, we use a work management tool called Clicker, and it's adequate for our needs. And we got into it by defining what our needs were and then looking for the software. And it has that danger. It's so flexible and creatable and editable that you can just get lost in creating it. What would happen if we could just have one platform? It's, there's that idea of every click a potential client has to go through, you get drop off. So I can see us, if we were able to streamline it and maximize it, we'd get that efficiency. And maybe if it was all on one platform, we'd see how much crap there was out there and we could condense it down using my new AI. And then it would just integrate nicely into a platform. So I don't know the software, but I think there is defining what you need it to do. And then searching for your piece of software rather than just hoping you're going to find it and then work out what you need. And I think one of the benefits, everybody's writing different content and so much of it overlaps. So we could have it on one platform and then rewrite it, probably with AI at this point. Yeah. We could at least condense it down and make it so that somebody can understand all of it rather than little fragments here and there.
It's the thing that always baffled me, right, is the companies that we've worked with in the past, they'd have a SharePoint to store some content. They'd have an internal comms platform to store some content. They'd have a learning management system to store some content, images, videos, documents. And you're like, these are all broadly storing the same thing and measuring the interaction of these. Like, why is this all different?
The bugbear that's connected to this is when people don't fully understand everything a tool can do. So the example in design, like if you need to make brochures, but you don't understand InDesign properly, and then which is a multi-page document builder, and you shoehorn it in and you make a big guess, but you don't know how to use it properly, and you don't get the benefits of the system. And you decided to make it in Canva instead because you had slightly better at that, and then so now you've got a template for this software and a template in that software, and somebody knows slightly better how to use that, but nobody sat down and really learned it. We've had, what was it, the Facebook equivalent of a work platform.
Workplace.
And it has all Workplace. It has all these features, and they're trying to use them, but somebody doesn't like that feature, so they're using this other software to get another feature, but it's actually also in that software if you look carefully. So this idea of maximizing and understanding how the thing works once you settle on it. And I think that's probably what's happening there, right? So-and-so comes from a business, they're used to whatever teams, and somebody else has come in and they used to agreed, and now there's SharePoint, and they're doing a similar thing. It's one of the headaches of working in a large agency. This is why I often work with smaller teams, boutique, and don't work in a larger agency anymore.
This, I think you've just hit the nail on the head there, and you really have. I think I go back to a mutual friend of ours, Caliste. Whilst we were at the same, if I can't do that, it doesn't happen. I want to do lasers because Carl likes lasers. The element me and Cal came up with a proposal for a plastic brick toy company, and we came up with a concept that's like, all you need to do is create Google for all of your stuff. Like, Google is quite intuitive in aggregating and bringing all this stuff, and you have lots of stuff. And because we aren't as creative as you, we called it Le Google, like leg Google, like that's what we called it in the proposal. We probably, I don't think you were working there at that point. We probably should have worked with you to figure out a better name. But that concept of just having something that's so frictionless and easy, where everything else in that whole world of everything we just talked about creates more friction, more logins, and single sign-on isn't the solution there, right? That's just like, oh, single sign-on will solve it. It's like, no, it won't, because they've still got to go in and like the platform still has many, many hurdles to overcome to get where you want to be. And with that rant,
it's like trying to redesign society, isn't it, in a large organization?
And that is what we are both all about. Freeformers and Wazza are all about that. And with that cheeky little plug for both of our companies, Mulkey, I'm going to wish you a lovely rest of your afternoon, evening. I thank you for joining us here on Freeformers and Friends, and we'll probably get you back at some point.
I mean, there's a whole plethora of topics we can pick, aren't we?
Well, that ends this chat, and now we need to start a new chat about what we're going to talk about next time. But for now, Mulkey, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Derby. Thank you.
Catch you later. So, like I said, that was the incredible Mulkey from Wazza, an absolutely incredible person who runs an incredible company, who created this thing here and everything that sits around it. Did an absolutely incredible job on essentially trying to capture stuff that was in mine and Emily's head and present it in a beautiful way. So, with that, we are going to end. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flash this up on the screen over here. If you want to be on Freeformers and Friends, you can scan this little QR code here. Scan this QR code here. It will show you all the available dates we have for this beautiful live streamed event we do here on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4 p.m. British summertime. I've really got to get out of the habit of just saying the time zone. But for our American audience, it's an absolute must. So good morning to y'all over in... God, I need to stop doing that, according to every American person I talk to. It's been a great joy to have you along with us today. Thank you for all the comments and people viewing, both on, we've got, who have we got? We've got some people on X, we've got some people on Twitch, we've got some people on LinkedIn. Thank you again for joining this second live stream. We will be back next Thursday. I just need to look up who we're talking with next Thursday. We're talking with an American. We're talking with Callie. Now, if you don't know who Callie is, you can watch me, her, and the lovely Sam Eaton talk every Monday at 3 p.m. on our HR Breakfast USA live stream. So I will be back on Monday with another live stream with some different people. And then we'll be speaking with Callie again on Thursday. Super exciting. But for now, thank you very much and enjoy your Thursday evening.